Inside every car ever built, from the first steam carriage to every EV on the road today, there is a small cage of gears doing something that sounds physically impossible. When you turn a corner, your outer wheel has to travel a longer arc than your inner wheel, but both wheels are driven by the same shaft. How do they spin at different speeds without tearing the axle apart? A French mechanical engineer named Onésiphore Pecqueur cracked it in 1827, watching mill gears rotate in a water-powered workshop on the outskirts of Paris. He had no formal calculus training. He was a builder, and he was furious that every carriage in France kept destroying itself every time it made a sharp turn. The engineering constraint was maddening. Solid axles forced both wheels to rotate at exactly the same speed. On a straight road, fine, but on a turn, the outer wheel needs to cover maybe 15% more distance than the inner wheel. Force them to spin at the same rate, and something has to give. The wheel skids and drags, or the axle shatters. You cannot build a city of carriages without solving this. But how do you connect two wheels that absolutely must stay linked and yet absolutely must be free to spin at different speeds? And how do you do it with nothing but gears? Let's start with the physics. On a solid rear axle, both wheels are bolted to the same steel rod. They are mechanically the same object. When the drive shaft turns, whether by horse or steam, it turns the axle, and the axle turns both wheels at absolutely identical rotational speed. Zero slip, zero independence. Now draw a turn. The outer rear wheel has to follow a larger radius. It traces a longer arc. In a typical carriage with turn of, say, 3 meters of turning radius, the outer wheel might need to travel 10 to 15% more distance than the inner wheel in the same time window. To cover more distance in the same time, it must spin faster. But on a solid axle, it can't. So what actually happens is two things. Either the inner wheel drags, forced to skid sideways across the cobblestones, grinding the iron tire down, stressing the axle in torsion until it flexes and cracks, or the outer wheel skips and hops, chattering across the road surface. Either way, enormous forces are transferred into the axle itself, forces it was never designed to handle. On a sharp urban corner, it could snap the axle completely, and in 1820s Paris, that wasn't a minor inconvenience. That was horses, passengers, and an expensive carriage collapsing into the road at speed. The obvious first instinct was to just separate the wheels completely, give each wheel its own independent stub axle. If they're not physically connected to each other, there's no forced speed relationship. Each wheel turns at whatever speed it needs to. It works for the turning problem, but it creates a catastrophically worse problem: directional control. When you drive in a straight line, any slight difference in road surface creates a torque imbalance. One side pulls harder. The carriage yaws sideways. On a wet Parisian road at night, it's not a carriage, it's a pendulum. Engineers tried adding mechanical governors and friction pads to restrain the independent wheels, but every friction coupler either seized up completely, locking the wheels, or allowed too much slip, giving no control. You were either back to a solid axle or back to chaos. Independent wheels gave you the turn, they took away the straight line. The problem wasn't solved, it was relocated. The second generation of solutions was more sophisticated. If you can't have wheels fully fixed or fully free, why not have a controlled slip mechanism at each hub? The concept: the drive shaft applies torque through a friction plate at each wheel. In a turn, the plate at the slower inner wheel slips, allowing that wheel to fall behind. You could tune the slip threshold with a spring pressure adjustment screw. It sounds elegant. The physics destroyed it. First, friction means heat. In continuous use on cobbled streets, the clutch plates would overheat within a few kilometers. Metal expands, the gap tolerances collapse, the clutches seize solid. You're back to a solid axle. Second, even when it worked, it was binary, engaged or slipping. There was no smooth, proportional response. A fixed spring pressure can't adapt to both. The clutch either fought the turn or surrendered to it.
By the 1820s, coachmakers across Europe had burned through virtually every mechanical approach they could conceive. The problem had a name in workshops: la contrainte du virage, the constraint of the turn. Some engineers were beginning to accept it as a fundamental limit of wheeled vehicles. You could have control, or you could have smooth turning. Not both. Not on the same axle.
The breakthrough came from watching a mill. A small idler gear mounted on a floating pin between two larger drive gears did something mill engineers barely noticed. Because its pin could pivot, it didn't just transmit rotation, it averaged it. Resist one side and the planet gear swings, giving more to the other. Pecqueur saw it as a law, not a convenience. Connect two wheels through a floating mediator, not a rigid link, not a clutch, and each wheel takes exactly what the geometry demands. The mental model is this. Every previous solution tried to either rigidly connect the wheels or completely sever them. Pecqueur did something different. He connected them through a floating intermediary, a gear that can spin freely on its own axis while being carried in a circle by the drive input. It doesn't block either wheel, it doesn't release either wheel, it continuously distributes torque between them based on resistance, constrained not by force, but by negotiation. Here's the mechanism. The drive shaft spins a ring gear. Fixed to that ring gear is a cross-shaped spider carrier holding 4 small planet bevel gears. On either side of those planet gears, 2 side gears. Ring gear, spider carrier, planet gears, 2 side gears. That's the whole system. Straight line, both wheels push back equally. The planet gears have no reason to spin on their own axes. They lock up and the whole assembly rotates as one rigid unit. Both wheels get identical speed, 0 friction losses, mechanically indistinguishable from a solid axle. Now make a turn. The inner wheel drags, higher resistance. The planet gears begin spinning on their own axes. And because they mesh both side gears simultaneously, that spin transfers rotation from the slow inner wheel to the faster outer wheel. Speed borrowed from one side, lent to the other. The governing equation, left wheel speed plus right wheel speed, always equals twice the carrier speed. Straight line, 1 + 1 = 2. Tight turn, 0.7 plus 1.3 still equals 2. The total is fixed. The split is determined automatically by road resistance. No driver input, no clutch, no decision. The geometry of the gear mesh does it all. 2 years of refinement, a mechanism that fits in 2 hands, patented in 1828, and then quietly, without ceremony, it appeared in every vehicle anyone ever built afterward. So why did this matter urgently? Paris in 1827 was a city in mechanical crisis. The medieval street grid, built for ox carts, was handling thousands of carriage trips daily through alleys as narrow as 4 meters. A broken axle on a narrow Parisian street didn't just wreck a carriage, it jammed an entire district. The carriage industry's response was to overbuild axles until they were too heavy to snap. It didn't work. You can't engineer your way out of a geometry problem. Coachmakers blamed cobblestones. Wealthy clients blamed drivers. No one blamed the fundamental mechanical law they couldn't solve. When Pecqueur demonstrated his steam vehicle with the differential axle, the crowd watched it complete a full U-turn on a narrow street. Both wheels tracked smoothly. No scrape, no skid. The coachmakers went home that day and started copying the design. The broken axle era was over. Every vehicle on the road today, your car, every bus, every truck, turns corners using this exact topology. Planet gears on a spider carrier floating between 2 side gears. The materials are different, the tolerances are machined to microns, but the arrangement Pecqueur carved into cast iron in 1828 is structurally identical to what's inside every axle housing ever made. 1.4 billion vehicles. But Pecqueur's differential has one flaw. It's too generous. If one wheel loses grip entirely, it pours all the engine's torque into that useless spinning wheel and starves the one with grip. The fix? Add just enough resistance to the planet gears so they need a minimum torque difference before they'll slip. A limited slip differential. Negotiated transfer with friction as policy. Every performance car since the 1960s uses this principle. Then the principle left wheels entirely. A tank can't steer by angling fixed tracks, so military engineers applied the differential to the track sprockets. Slow one track, speed up the other. The tank pivots. The Cleveland cross-drive transmission, standard in American tanks from the 1950s, is Pecqueur's gear arrangement with braked outputs. A carriage solution became the steering mechanism of armored warfare. And then it became an algorithm. Every major web server runs a load balancer, software that routes incoming traffic toward whichever server is under least load. High CPU load equals high resistance. The balancer routes away from it. The topology is structurally identical to a differential gear. Two outputs, a floating mediator, resistance governing the split. Pecqueur couldn't have imagined a web server, but his principle runs on every website on the internet today. Onésiphore Pecqueur died in 1852. No fame, no monument. His name doesn't appear on a single car dashboard. But inside every vehicle that has ever made a turn, every carriage, every car, every tank, every Mars rover, a small cage of beveled gears floats on a cross-shaped carrier, negotiates quietly between two spinning shafts, and distributes exactly the right force to exactly the right place. Not by force, by geometry. That was his idea.